that guide, we're going to be diving deep into the tactics of all of the armies of Warhammer 40k and how to play against all these incredible menaces that are going to be haunting you on the tabletop or on TTS. My name is Jonathan Harkin. I am a Warhammer 40,000 enthusiast. I play for Team Norway right now, and I'm thrilled to be with that group of amazing players. And I'm just looking forward to bringing some higher level tactical awareness to the masses. So if you'll join me on this journey, we're going to be going through Genestealer cults today. Now, Genestealer cults was actually my very first army, so I'm very, very familiar with them. And I tend to think that they're one of the best armies in the entire game right now. As I'm going through this guide, currently my two armies that I'm mainly playing is the Adeptus Custodes and the Orcs. So I'll be talking a lot about individual things that the Custodes and the Orcs will do to counter the Genestealer cults. But this guide is just about the Genestealer cults. So it's going to apply to whether you're a Marine player, a Thousand Suns player, a Drukhari player, any of those players. All right, you guys will all get an in-depth breadth of knowledge about the Genestealer cults today. All right, so this is a tactical guide, so I'm going to be going through unit combos. How do their units actually operate on the battlefield? I'll be going through army traits. How does their conceal mechanism or their crossfire mechanism operate? I'll be going through character surprises, which will involve warlord traits and relic combos, and then unique interactions that their characters give to the game that allow them to do really, really interesting things that other armies can't. How do their secondaries score? And then finally, we're going to talk a lot about the counters to the army itself. All right, so this is the matchup that I drew up for comparing Genestealer cults and Orcs. Remember, this is going to apply to everything. Don't worry. So Genestealer cults, they are a horde army, okay? These horde armies are really, really powerful, and they have a lot of benefits. One of those benefits is that they have an amazing amount of board control. I even say supreme control. I actually compared them to Orcs here because a lot of these things that you'll notice, they're actually quite similar. Now, they do play a little bit differently, but they have a lot of the same strengths as some other top 10 contending armies right now. They have a very high amount of obsects, which other armies like Orcs maybe they kind of lack, unless you're playing Death Skulls or something, which I'm not, because I'm a true Orc. I play Goths. They have excellent secondaries. The Genestealer cults have amazing secondaries. Then they're going to have tons of low AP, moderate damage shots. We're talking damage 1, damage 2 shots. Now, their shooting is very deceptive because they have mechanisms, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, that's going to give them extra pluses to hit, extra pluses to wound, all over the place. So they do a shocking amount of damage that you might not really be expecting. Then they're going to have excellent character combinations. Now, these character combinations are a little bit different than other armies, such as the Orcs, who have supreme character combinations, who have like supreme killy characters. So, like the Orc War Boss is probably one of the most killy generic characters in the entire game. Genestealer cults don't have that, but what they have is they have characters that have very unique rules that allow them to influence the game in ways that other armies just can't. Then they're going to have the single best deployment shenanigans in the entire game. And did I mention amazing secondaries? So we're going to move on. Let's just start talking about the very first subject, which is the Deepstrikes. The Deepstrikes. This is what really is going to be giving Genestealer cults an amazing board pressure and board control, because they have a unique mechanism called ambush, which allows them to deep strike 8 inches away from you instead of 9 inches like everyone else in the game. But it gets better. Let's say you have your Genestealers and they're culted out with all their guns, Genestealer cultists, and they don't care about charging because they just want to shoot. Well, they, my friend, can deep strike within 6 inches of you by giving up the ability to charge. Now, this is so powerful. It allows for some of the best move blocking in the entire game, and it can cause havoc in your lines if you're not ready for it. It gets better. It gets, well, worse depending on who you are and what you're thinking. There's a pre-game upgrade, which is a points upgrade. Genestealer cults have a bunch of these. They're called proficient plannings. And this is the way I think upgrades actually should be done. I think it should be points and not CP based, but I digress. Anyway, they have a pre-game upgrade called Lying in Wait, which will allow them to give one of their core units a 3-inch deep strike. Now, they can't charge after this, but a 3-inch deep strike allows them to deep strike on an objective that you also occupy, which is terrifying. So we have to be able to be aware of things like this. Then they're also going to have a pre-game move with one of their core units besides bikes, because their bikes will always pre-game move. But what they can do is they can upgrade, and this normally goes on their pure string Genestealers, to give them, once they reveal themselves, to give them a pre-game move. At which point then they could also then advance and then charge, right? So I'm also going to talk about Conceal real fast. So on the conceal front, these gene stealers deploy in blips, not models. So they're going to put these little blips all over the battlefield, blip, 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 blip. And they're going to win deployment because you're going to have no idea where their models are. And then after everyone's finished deploying, you determine who goes first and who goes second. If the gene stealer cults are going first, well, then they're going to start to reveal their blips. But they do that at the beginning of their turn, which means you cannot out deploy. You can't even use redeploys to take them out. So they're going to deploy all their blips. And if they go first, they'll deploy all their models on the field, and they're going to beat you in deployment because they're going to just counter you everywhere. If you had your tanks on this front, they're going to have their fragiles on this front. It's just they're going to win deployment. You can't stop it. Now, let's say you get lucky and you go first. Goths love to go first, right? Well, it gets very tricky because we will move up the board, but we're not allowed to go within 9 inches of a blip. And if you're the person who goes first, the Gene Stealer's cultist does not reveal their blips until after your movement phase. So you don't even know what units you're moving towards if you're moving full steam ahead. And worse off, say you have infiltrators, like I use a lot of commandos, or say you're playing Raven Guard and you have a lot of forward movement. You can't get within 9 inches of a blip, so it doesn't matter how much movement you have. You literally cannot move within 9 inches of a blip, and it can be very, very strong. So I'm going to switch to a TTS view here, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate how this operates, okay? All right, and we're on TTS, Magic Computers. So I have a few different scenarios drawn up here, but let's say the orcs went first, and the battle wagon moved on up into no man's land, and it's getting ready to get set for the wall. Let's say the Gene Stealer cults went first, and the orcs moved up, and then the Gene Stealer cults have gone second. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to look at this battle wagon, and they're going to say, hey, this battle wagon probably has a war boss and like a whole 20 knobs or something inside of it. There's like 650 points of death in this unit. Well, I wonder what I can do to stop it. How about I sacrifice a 45-point unit? So what they're going to do is they're going to drop a 45-point unit of acolytes, and they're just going to make sure that they're all exactly 6 inches away. And so now what happens? They don't care about charging you because what they've effectively done is they have completely denied this orc player the ability to use over a quarter of his entire army. Because when it's his turn, what are you going to do? Call a wah and waste your advance and charge on a 5-inch movement into a 45-point unit of acolytes? No, you'd be a fool to do that. So what's going to happen here is when the orc player goes, they're going to move the battle wagon up 4 to 5 inches, and then they're going to charge, and they'll kill all these and they'll kill all the acolytes. And the acolytes will die. And then after they're dead, they'll move the 3 inches up. And then they'll be pissed because they spent an entire turn moving approximately 7 or 8 inches to kill a 45-point unit that was doing nothing else that game. Meanwhile, that unit of acolytes very well also may have retrieved battlefield data over here, so they also scored on points. It's ludicrous how good they are at movement blocking. So you have to be aware that they're going to do this to you. Second off, they can deep strike 3 inches with a certain upgrade. Let me show you what that looks like. So let's come over to this objective here. And we have our Gretchen, and they're just holding this objective. Oh, la-di-da-di-da. I love being on objectives. I'm getting the good bits. Everyone's happy that I'm here. Well, suddenly, the Gene Stealer cultist is like, hey, you know what? I don't like you having primary anymore. And I paid like 10 or 15 points for a pregame upgrade, so I'm just going to take your objective by deep striking onto it. And as long as I am 3 inches away, then it is totally legal and you can't do anything about it. Because they're OBSEC. So now they're 3 inches away. Gretchen are not OBSEC. Boom, this is their objective. From a deep strike. No, not even a deep strike charge, just a deep strike. So it is horrifying. So the way you counter this, though, is pretty simple. I mean, it's not that hard. You just have to know that they can do it. You just have to keep your dudes spread out. So once you spread your models out, now suddenly there's nowhere they can actually get on. They're still going to show up, and you can't screen them out, and they're going to kill you. But at least they won't take your objective in that turn. But yeah, that's dangerous and terrifying, and it's going to happen to you. So be ready for it. All right, so now I'm just going to talk about the blips here. So if we look at these blips, this is about the correct size. Forgive me, I didn't have the exact correct blip on TTS, but anyway. This is what it's going to look like when they deploy. They're just going to have these blips everywhere. And these blips cause real problems because you have no idea where they deployed. Now let's say we're playing on conversion, and orcs get turn 1. And you're like, okay, yay. I've got this battle wagon. I'm just going to charge it right into your lines, and I'm going to wreck you. So I'm going to move my 12 inches up. 12 inches. There we go. I moved my 12 inches up, and now I'm only going to have a 3-inch charge whenever you reveal your blip, right? Not right. Actually, completely 100% freaking wrong. Because you cannot move within 9 inches of the split. Which means, back that thing up. Your first turn, you're ready to go in Alpha Strike. Actually, you're barely going to get out of your deployment zone. And then they're going to do something even more annoying. They're going to spend a CP, or it might be 2 CP, but they're going to spend CP. And what they're going to do is they're going to take this blip, and they're going to go, nope, I'm just going to redeploy whatever this was into Deepstrike. And that's going to be gone. So now you have an impossible charge into the next blip. So your first turn, you move 3 inches. How does that feel? It feels terrible, let me tell you that. GSC Occultists love going second because they don't reveal these blips until at the end of your movement phase. So after you moved here and you dedicated, your 600 points of your army into this unit, he can just pick this up, and even if he doesn't, he can just turn that into a 45-point model unit that he doesn't even care about losing. And what's even more, the way these things work is you don't actually have to deploy your model on the objective. You just have to deploy, or the blip. The model has to be deployed within 1 inch of the center of the blip. So let me show you how that works. Say we have this Acolyte icon board. When he gets revealed, say they pick this up, now he gets revealed here, and he's just going to be deployed within 1 inch of the center. So he doesn't have to be deployed exactly where the model was, which means a lot of times what these guys will try to do is they'll try to finagle it so that they can even redeploy. They can even, when they finally reveal themselves on the inside of this terrain, because it's going to be within 1 inch of the center, which is terrifying and very, very frustrating if you're playing against them. But those are the shenanigans they can do with blips, so be prepared. Anyway, we're going to go back to the lecture now, and we'll revisit this board when I have more demonstrations for other things I'm talking about. Okay, so that's Conceal. All right, now we're going to talk about Crossfire. Crossfire is an awesome mechanism, and the way it works is if their troops hit you with 5 shots that deal 1 damage, they don't have to wound, they just have to hit. Or they hit you with one shot that deals multiple damage, whether that's D3 or 2 or whatever. Then you get a Crossfire token, which means after that unit finishes activating, every other unit that attacks the Crossfire target is going to be +1 to hit. This is really strong for an army that has always has a ballistic skill of 4. It's going to be making everything hit on 3s against the target they want to kill. And it's really flavorful and super cool, and I love it, and it's really, really strong. Now, it is important to remember that the unit that actually delivered the Crossfire token doesn't benefit from it. They have to, they place it, and then the next unit's going to benefit from it. There's a second stage to Crossfire, though, where it gets way more dangerous. So what happens is you get a rule called Exposed. Now, if you can draw a line from a Crossfire unit to a target, and then another Crossfire unit, you can draw a line between those 2 units, then you can add what's called Exposed. And I'm going to demonstrate in just a moment for you so you don't get confused. And if you're exposed, you're also +1 to wound that target. It is important to note that being exposed requires a Crossfire token as well. But this is so strong because suddenly you can get auto guns that are strength 3, normally wounding things on 5, wounding on 4s, which makes them a lot more dangerous. Then, if you are going to be exposed in this way, crossfired and exposed, then you're also going to lose the benefits of the cover that you have, of light cover that you have, which is a nice little bonus. So let me switch to TTS, and I'm going to demonstrate how this works. All right, so let's say we have this battle wagon here, and he's all excited because he's like, hey, I'm a T8, and I can't be hurt by your measly strength 4 shots. And we have a unit of jackals here, and they've got a bunch of like strength 4 pistols, and there's some strength 5 flamers in there. And the battle wagon's like, I don't care at all, because your strength 4 pistols will be winning me on 6s, and they're just going to bounce off of me. Not so true, my friend. Let's say we have the Kellermorph here, and the Kellermorph is going to shoot this battle wagon, and he's going to put a crossfire marker on it. Well, suddenly, now you have a crossfire target, and you have 2 crossfire units that you can draw a line through that crosses the unit who's crossfired. So now he is officially exposed. So when the jackals shoot at the battle wagon, he's going to be +1 to hit, but he's also going to be +1 to wound, which is a really big deal because now these jackals are going to be, with their strength 4 pistols, even though they're going into a T8 target, are going to be winning on 5s, not 6s, which is a huge damage boost. So that's the way exposed works. As long as you can draw a line from one unit to another unit, it doesn't really matter where they're placed. So like this is still legal because I can draw a line from the Kellermorph to one jackal. If they're here, it's totally fine. So it's still legal because you can do it like this. It's really not that difficult to get. It can take some nice movement, but it's not that hard to get. So don't be too freaked out when it does happen to you. All right, so that's the crossfire and the exposed mechanism in a nutshell. We'll go back to the lecture now. All right, now here's the damage output. And the damage output is shockingly, sneakily, cunningly, some would say, high. Let's take a unit of neophytes, which is the basic trooper model of the Genius of the Cults. They're basically guardsmen, and they're going to be running in blocks of 10 to 20 man blobs. They're going to have 2 to 4 seismic cannons and 2 to 4 flamers per unit, because with Arcs of Omen, now their special weapons, which are flamers, are free, so they're always going to take them. Now, each seismic cannon is going to be heavy 3, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. So they're going to have 12 of those shots coming out of them, and if you're crossfired, you're going to be hitting on 3s, not 4s. These units will be spammed, and you're going to see them going everywhere. They're going to kill Marines, they're going to kill Knobs, they're going to kill anything that they shoot at. Because if you're exposed, you're also going to ignore the benefits of light cover, so even heavy troops aren't really safe from it. And they're going to be +1 to wound if you're exposed. So let's take a Terminator, who's got a strength to toughness of 5, or toughness of 4. Well, strength 6, +1 to wound, so you're wounding on 2s and you're ignoring the cover. So the chances are real high. The maximum save you're going to be getting on your Terminators is going to be a 3-up armor, maybe a 4-up, depending on whether you get a Storm Shield or not. Damage 2, that's going to kill things, but they can kick it up a notch and turn those seismic cannons into damage 3 with a stratagem. Damage 3. Now there is a second profile for the seismic cannons as well, which would be heavy 6, 4 attacks, AP 1, damage 1, and they can do that as well, depending if they have to clear shaft. So be aware of that. But I'm talking mainly for the big hits right here. So that strat, like I was saying, will cause all their weapons to be damage +1. They also have a strat actually that'll cause them to auto wound on 6s to hit. This is so darn strong because they're going to have 12 auto guns as well, with rapid fire range. That's going to be 24 shots, auto wounding on 6s. And as we'll see later on, they're going to have ample access to reroll 1s to hit. So these guys can actually put out a crazy amount of damage, even though they're just basic infantry. So be aware. So let's start talking about some character support. So there's a few characters here. The Nexos is one that you'll see in every single army. He has a very, very cool ability called Strategic Coordination, where what he's going to do is he's going to just put a free crossfire token on any unit on the table board, no line of sight required, at the beginning of the command phase. So there's going to be a free crossfire token. Boom. We love it. We got it. There it is. Then he also has an ability that's going to put you within range of any one of his character's auras. So say you have a Primus who's like a blend between a captain and a lieutenant. Well, this captain-lieutenant blend is going to have a reroll 1 aura, reroll 1s to hit aura, and you can just jump that across the table, anywhere you want. So say you have a neophyte blob that's in your enemy's deployment zone, but you'd really like to give them reroll 1s. Well, let's just call in a radio, and we'll give you our aura. It's awesome. We love it. So that just leads us right into the Primus, who, that's what he does. He gives reroll 1s to hit, and he can also choose one unit in the command phase, or it might be movement phase, doesn't matter, to give them reroll 1s to wound as well. But that's a targeted aura ability. It's not the aura that he can actually bounce through the Nexus's ability, so he can't bounce that one. But he does give some reroll 1s to wound as well. He's a very good unit, and we like both of them a lot. So then we'll talk about the Sanctus and the Kelomorph. Now the Kelomorph, sorry to say, all you guys, I know you all love your characters. People love their Masters of Execution. People love their Primaris Chaplains. People love them all. Kelomorph is the coolest character in the entire freaking game. Games Workshop just knocked it out of the park with this guy. He's a total legend. He's got a few really cool abilities. The first of all is going to be his ability to shoot. So he's Ballistic Skill 2 character, and he's got 6 Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1 shots. That will cause a mortal wound in addition on wound rolls of 6. Well, his ability is that if he hits you, he can then roll another hit roll. So he can get 12 shots with that. If he hits all 6 and hits all 6 again, typically you're going to see him land about 10 shots with it, but that's still pretty darn good. That's pretty horde clearing for 10 Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1 shots. But if he wins you on 6, it's an additional mortal wound. So he'll clear MSU units. He's real darn good. He also has another ability, which is freaking amazing. He scoots and shoots. So after he shoots, he's going to move his full movement distance. And this is specified that he can do that even when he shows up from reserves, which is incredibly strong because very few units have the ability to do that. So he's out in the open. He's going to shoot, pew, 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 pew. and then he's just going to jump into a transport, and you can't target him. Or he appears from Deepstrike or reserves, he shoots, and then he's just going to move behind terrain, so you can't shoot him back. Or he's going to move onto an objective that he didn't have. It's amazing. He has a few other really cool little tricks up his sleeve. So he's got a 2 CP fight on death strat, or shoot, not fight, shoot on death strat. So if you kill him in shooting or in melee, he's just going to shoot you back with his pistols and kill you. Speaking about melee, let's say he doesn't die in melee, because he does have a 5 invuln. It's possible that he could survive. In the next phase, he's going to shoot you in his shooting phase, and then he's going to move out of combat, which isn't a fallback. He's got so much utility. He's such an amazing character. He also has a relic that that every single army will always take on him, called the Wormtooth Rounds, which will give him which will change his weapon into a heavy 3, strength 6, AP 3, damage 3 gun. That's pretty darn awesome, because it's going to give you anywhere between 5 and 6 shots with his ability. Because if you hit, then you get to roll another hit roll. One thing I did fail to mention is that with his pistols, he actually does ignore Lookout Sir as well. So look out for that. Then the Sanctus. The Sanctus is the assassin. You won't see him in every army, but when you do see him, you need to be aware of what he does. First off, he is a sniper who auto-hits. He can't miss. He automatically hits his target every single time. Second of all, when he hits you, he has a stratagem that can force a Psyker to take apparels. So if you have a Psyker alive on 3 wounds, and he shoots him with a sniper rifle, because he ignores Lookout Sir, obviously, deals 2 damage to you, you think you're safe, but you're not. Because he's going to spend CP and he's going to make you take apparels, and then you die. Which is brutal. And remember, if Psykers die on perils, they can then blow up. Which is horrifying. And then lastly, since he auto-hits, he can give a Crossfire token to anyone he can see. So if they're trying to struggle for getting Crossfire tokens, well, he's going to give them one. So, pretty cool. Oh, and then the final ability, sorry, I have it written down here as well. He can turn auras off. Don't like Mortarian's his 9-inch bubble of turning all of everyone's rerolls off? Okay, cool. No more aura for you for this round. The Sanctus has a place in the game, and he could really screw people's battle plans up. Be aware. So I'm going to switch to TTS view, and I'm going to kind of show you the tactics with these two guys, because this is a pretty important one. All right. So here we go. So we've got, let's say, Mr. Kellermorph here. And we've got a Beast Boss on Squigazar right here. So Kellermorph's going to pop out, and he's going to say, hey, I don't like you, Mr. Beast Boss boy. I'm going to shoot you a bunch. And so he shoots him with his pistols, pew, pew, pew. He deals maybe 3 or 4 moves, and then he goes, whoop, and pops inside the truck. It's so annoying. And then this truck can also like throw grenades and stuff because now it has a unit embarked on it. It's so frustrating. Or Mr. Beast Boss cleared a unit, and he's all like right here, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go munch on me a Kellermorph next turn. Well, the Kellermorph's going to shoot him, and then he's going to go, boop, sorry. Good luck getting around here. Then the Beast Boss has to like move around and land a charge. It's very, very frustrating. Or, let's say he doesn't have an objective, and he deep strikes, his 6 inches away. Has to stay 6 inches away. So he shoots him, and then he, boop, takes the objective. It's awesome. He's got so much utility. He's so incredible. We'll move on to the other side so I can talk to you about the Sanctus here. So we've got a Sanctus here. He's all like with his sniper rifle. Looks very cool. And let's say we have our War Boss here. And he's sitting here with a bunch of knobs. And he's ready to go crush some of these jackals. And I don't have a knob with Wah Banner here. So let's just pretend this is a Wah Banner. So let's say I have 2 different auras giving +1 to hits for my knobs with Power Claws. And I think my knobs with Power Claws are going to come eat these jackals. Well, normally they'd be hitting on 4s, but since they have 2 +1 auras, now suddenly they're hitting on 2s, which is pretty darn cool. Then you have to think about jackals, which we'll talk about in a little bit, are always -1 to hit. So okay, you have Power Claws that are a +2 but -1, so now they're hitting on 3s. Still pretty good for a freaking Power Claw, which is just Power Fist for those of you who don't know. Enter the Sanctus. The Sanctus shoots the War Boss, says no more aura for you. And once he turns the aura off, suddenly you're only +1 and -1. Those Power Claws, even though you have 2 auras again, you +1, you're still hitting on 4s. Oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. Once again, we have another option over here too. We've got our Weird Boy in the middle, and this Weird Boy is just going to be doing, say, an action where he's going to do a warp ritual for us. Well, the Sanctus is going to be like, no more for you. Shoots and hits him. Say he wounds him, deals 2 damage. The weird boy's like, oh, well, I don't care because, you know, I still have 2 wounds left. I'll do Warp Ritual again next turn. No, 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 because the Sanctus is going to spend CP and he's going to force you to take a Perils. Then you're going to Perils and die. It sucks. But there's a lot of utility between these guys. And remember, this guy can also Deepstrike. So you can still put him anywhere on the battlefield you want, 6 inches away from enemy units. So these guys have a lot of utility. These 2 characters are freaking amazing. Let's head back to the lecture now. All right. Acolyte Icon Ward. The Acolyte Icon Ward has a really good ability, and this ability is going to let him regenerate D3 models from any core unit, which is going to be Acolytes, Neophytes, and Jackals, which are the motorcycle boys. Vroom, vroom. Now, if it's the Neophytes, he's going to resurrect D6. And this actually stacks with the inbuilt icons that the Neophytes also have. So Neophytes can come with an icon which allows them to regenerate D6 models in the command phase. It's called Summoning the Cult. Well, the Acolyte Ward stacks with that. Now, you can never regenerate more than 6 models, but say you roll a 1 to regenerate with the Icon Ward. Well, when this guy pops in, he's going to give you another D6 to try to get to that 6. So 1 and a 5 will still give you 6. Makes it very reliable to just continuously regenerate your models. It gets very frustrating when we start talking about the Jackals, as I'll demonstrate right now. So now that we're going to talk about regenerating these Jackals. So let's say I have my Beast Boss, who's a total beast, and we love him. And he charges in. Well, he's going to start munching on some Jackals. The Jackals are shockingly tough to kill, because as we'll talk a little bit, they're going to have Baby Transhuman, probably. They're also going to have a 6-up Feel No Pain. And that's going to be kind of tough to chew through. So what's going to happen is my Beast Boss is going to come through. He's going to have a bunch of attacks. And each one of these Wolf Quads has 4 wounds. So he's going to kill both of these guys. Boom, boom. And that'll soak up 6 attacks. And then let's say 2 more go through. Boom, boom. And so he kills all of these guys. He kills 2 normal guys and 2 Wolf Quads. Well, it should make it pretty easy to kill the rest of the bikes next turn. Oh, no, no. Because what's going to happen is in his command phase, this Acolyte Icon Ward is going to be within 6 inches, and you're going to regenerate D3 models, which can be Wolf Quads. And then you're going to have basically an entire squad to deal with again. Then these guys, since they have the inbuilt ability to fall back, shoot, and charge, are just really going to screw you over. So it's super powerful because it's an aura, so it's 6 inches. So you can have a unit of Jackals here, a unit of Jackals here, and a unit of Jackals here, and conceivably regenerate 100 points of units per models per turn easily, just from that one model. And this happens in the command phase, which makes it very easy to sneakily say these guys are gone, and you're like here. Makes it super easy to regenerate onto the objective. Boom, and taking the objective. Very, very, very strong and useful tech piece. You will see him. Yes, he can deep strike within 6 inches of the enemy units. So it's not hard to get him where he needs to go. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Patriarch. I love the Patriarch. He's awesome. Everyone loves the Patriarch. He's just super cool. And he's overpriced, and he just doesn't have a place in the army, sadly. He's when the Gene Stealer Cults Codex was being written, everything about him was awesome and super cool, and then GW just took a swing and they missed. And he just doesn't really work, so you're not going to see him. He's very similar to like how Gazgul is for the Orcs. He's awesome. He's just not going to be taken, you know. So it's sad, but we love you anyway. That's the Patriarch. Let's talk about some relics, warlord traits, stuff like that. There's a few interesting relics, some that you may see, some that you will see. So the Sword of the Void's Eye will just add 2 strength, 3 AP, and 2 damage. But it's also going to give you reroll hits and wounds. And you're going to put that on a Primus, which he's going to be on a backfield objective, giving his aura out. But when you try to get behind any lines, you go into his backfield objective, that guy's can be surprisingly killy. So don't be too surprised when that guy kind of lays some damage out for you. Then the Unwilling Orb. If the Gene Stealer Cult player is going to be taking Psychers, they will have the Unwilling Orb. It's going to give them an additional deny and unlimited deny range, and +1 to cast their maledictions, which are just amazing abilities. They have amazing psychic spells. So it is one of the better relics, I think, in the entire game, and it's going to really screw things up. The Wormtooth Rounds. Wormtooth Rounds are just what I was talking about earlier with the Killamorph. It's going to give them the AP or Strength 6, AP 3, Damage 3 shots, which when crossfire and exposed, Strength 6 is going to be wounding most things on 3s, 2s, some things on 4s. Pretty darn good relic. You'll see it in every single game. And then there's 2 others that you may see. Hand of Aberrance will show up. And this guy, it's another way to make the Primus a little bit of a beat stick, get some more damage 3 in melee there. Then the Crouchling is going to give a free reroll to cast to the bearer once per turn. Also, any casting rolls doubles, impossible to deny. So the Crouchling and Unwilling Orb is going to make GSC kind of psychic powerhouses. There's one other relic on here I forgot to put down, but it's a relic specifically for the Nexus, which lets him do his radio in twice per turn. So he can drop the Primus's aura onto 2 different units. So let me just take a second and show you that Unwilling Orb strategy right there. So let's say I've got my Magus. This guy's got the Unwilling Orb. And then I have my Weird Boy. And this guy is going to be casting Warp Ritual. Right? So Warp Ritual is going to be going off. Pew, pew, pew. Get me all these points. And the Magus is going to be over here. And he is safe, right? Because you're 38 inches away. Wrong. Unwilling Orb is still going to be there. It's still going to deny you, because it's unlimited range, and he gets 2 of them. Which means if he has a second Psyker who's here, he could use this Psyker's deny here and the Unwilling Orb's deny somewhere over here. If you're playing against Genestealer cults and they have a Psyker with the Unwilling Orb, do not take a Psychic secondary. Just don't. It'll be a disaster, and you will not enjoy what happens. So just don't do it to yourself. Trust me, I've made that mistake. All the Warlord traits suck. Don't worry about them, to be honest with you. They were all made for Patriarchs, and honestly, you're just not going to see Patriarchs. So I wouldn't really concern myself too much about it. Thing for you to know, though, is if they do happen to take a Patriarch, well, they can spend 1 CP to get 2 other Warlord traits onto 2 separate characters. So they can get a bunch of Warlord traits out there, but you're just not really going to see them too much. The one that's interesting is the Focus of Adoration, not the Focus of Adoration. It's the Prowling Adjutant, which will allow you to basically be a Warp Spider and move 6 inches before or when you're declared as a charge target. And that can be kind of interesting, but for the most part, I wouldn't pay too much attention to those. Psychic Discipline is amazing. It's incredible. So they've got a couple different spells. Sorry, I forgot the attack spell, but they can just add 1 attack to a unit. Really darn good. We love adding attacks to units. That's going to stack really, really well with like our Genestealers or with our Acolytes, as we'll see in just a moment. Then we have Psychic Stimulus, which is a freedom of movement spell. It's going to give advance and charge to any unit, including like the tanks. So they have a great reach. And then it's going to allow you to ignore the penalty for shooting an assault weapon. Also, fallback and charge as well. So they have really good movement shenanigans all over the place. Then they also have Mass Hypnosis, which is one of the better spells in the game, in my opinion. It's going to subtract 1 attack from an enemy unit and make you fight last. Shockingly terrible for armies that do not handle interrupts very well. I'm looking at my beautiful orcs. You know, we just don't handle interrupts very well, and fight last is pretty strong. So that comes from the base Magus, the base Psyker, and he's got cast 2, deny 1. Psychic Discipline's pretty darn strong here. There's 6 unique cults. I'm just going to go through these really fast. They're not super important because you're just not going to see them on the table very often. You may occasionally see 1 or 2 at a tournament, but the majority of the time it's going to be the Myriad cults, or the ones that let you build your own. And I'll talk about that one more in depth. So the first one for the sub-factions is going to be the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. Reroll charges, gain light cover 12 inches away. Now, this sounds actually pretty good, because rerolling charges on 8-inch charges, not bad. The problem is, Genestealer culture is very fragile. They have no armor. The only defense that they don't have any defense. So, like, if you're playing the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, so it's not that great, because if you don't make the charges, you lose. Then we go to the Hive Cult. This is actually the cult that I played when I was running GSC very heavily, and I still think this is highly competitive. I just haven't really seen people playing it, so I'll talk about this for just a moment. It's going to give you the ability to shoot when you fall back at -1 hit, so those Neophyte blobs are not going to be tied up in combat very much, and it's going to let you do an action when you fall back or advance, which gives you a lot of options. Suddenly you can drop a 5-man unit of Acolytes with Hand Flamers, and those guys are going to drop into a battlefield, retrieve battlefield data, you know, just 6 inches away from the enemy, because you can't screen that. And then they're going to hit you with their Hand Flamers at the same time. And remember, with Exposed, Genestealer cult's going to have Hand Flamers at +1 to wound, which can be very devastating. So it's a really, really good cult. They have some interesting things. Then we have the Bladed Cog. These guys used to be played highly competitively back in the days of Muscle Beach, because they could give like a 5 invuln upgrade to their Aberrants, which just it can't really be done anymore because you just don't have enough CP in the game, so you won't really see them. But it's good to know that they exist. They just give every unit a 6-up invuln, reroll 1 wound roll per shooting melee activation, and an extra 3 inches on your ranged weapons, excluding grenades. Last 3, Russet Claw, always count as being stationary in the shooting phase, and ignore basically mini armoring attempts. Then the Pauper Princes, you just won't see that one. They do have an interesting relic, but you just won't see it. Then the Twisted Helix. Twisted Helix is probably the only of one of the cults you're going to see in competition right now. And they're kind of like baby Cult of Bile. So everything gets +1 strength, +1 movement, and baby transhumans. So they can't be wounded on 2s. And then finally, though, the one that you will see. This one will be done in every single tournament list, basically. They're going to choose 4 different abilities, and they're going to go together, and essentially it's always going to be you're going to ignore any modifiers for industrial weapons. So like those seismic cans we were talking about earlier, they'll never suffer -1 to hit for moving with heavy weapons or shooting through dents. It's really dang nice. Baby transhumans. So everything in the entire army will never be wounded on 2s, which can be very frustrating and adds a huge amount of resilience to the army, which, to be fair, is desperately needed. So suddenly even your like strength 20 million Angron who comes out to clear them out, not winning them on 2s, which means he's not going to clear a unit of 20 neophytes. Then we got the other one, the last one that they're going to choose is going to be like a pile-in an extra inch or a 6-up Fiona Pain on bikes and trucks, which makes them very dang resilient, which is super frustrating. Trust me, those bikes are so much more resilient than you think they are, because they're going to be baby transhuman, and they're going to be a 6-up Fiona Pain, and then they're going to be resurrecting because the Acolytes is next to them. It's very hard to get rid of them. Then they have another option to re-roll 1s and 2s on psychic tests. So it's like that's what your Myriad cult is going to look like. That's what the faction is going to be, and just take it to the bank. Those are things you're going to have to deal with. So now we're going to put this together for some real damage output, okay? We have a 20-man blob of neophytes. These are the basic troops, remember? Basic troops. Basic. They're going to deep strike 6 inches away, maybe even 3 inches away if they pay for the pregame upgrade, which they will. Then they're going to have 12 strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, or 3 if you use a strat. Shots, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, 6s will auto wound if they use a strat, and you're going to have +1 to wound if you're exposed, ignoring cover. That is a shocking amount of damage from a basic troops unit. Because we're not done. They also have 4 flamers, and then 12 auto guns. And remember, those are all +1 to wound, auto wounding on 6s if they spend CP on the strat, which they will. All rerolling 1s to hit, ignoring cover. It is so powerful. There's so much damage output there. Just the seismics by themselves, granted when they're buffed, I've done the math when it's going out for a unit of knobs. The average total damage is going to be 15 damage suffered. Essentially, a quarter of the time, they're going to lose 8 knobs to just the seismic cannons, which means 1 unit of neophytes is going to wipe that entire unit of knobs, or that entire unit of marines, or whatever, right? It's so strong. And then, don't forget, they're going to be regenerating D6 models in the command phase to sneakily steal all these objectives. This is a 190-point unit. Whew! Guys, this is tough. This is real strong. So, like I said, the pregame upgrades they can deep strike within 3 inches, or they can actually deep strike with one called a perfect ambush, which gives them a free crossfire and counting as exposed for whatever unit they target when they show up from deep strike, which is so dangerous. Pure Strain Gene Stealers will be really fast here. They're fast. They advance and charge. They hit on 2s. They're better than Tyranid Gene Stealers for some reason. They're freaking awesome. They've got a 4-up invuln. They've got a mess of attacks, 4 attacks each. They're gonna if you can see them and you can shoot them with no AP, high volume fire, you'll obliterate them. They're a missile. They'll go in, they'll kill something, and they'll disappear. The trick for them is that they have that pre-game move. So let's say the Gene Stealer cult go first. When they reveal the blip for the Gene Stealer cult, for the Gene Stealers, they'll get to do a full movement, and then in their movement phase, they'll move in advance and then still charge. So they'll go like 24 inches and turn easy. Acolytes. These guys are dangerous. These guys are dangerous. Acolytes have industrial weapons. Remember, these industrial weapons, they're not going to suffer penalties to hit with them if they're being a Myriad cult, which they will be. They're a little bit tougher than normal guys because they've got T4, but still only 5-up armor. They're still pretty darn fragile. But they're heavy weapons. Let's talk about their rock drills. These guys. Strength times 2. So it's going to be strength 8. But the strength doesn't matter. Because if the heavy rock drill hits, which it'll hit more often than not, because they'll be hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s from the Primuses, or which will be bounced from anywhere on the entire tabletop. If it hits, it auto-wounds. Boom, if it hits, it wounds you. But if it hits you as on a 6, it also explodes into 2 mortal wounds, which is so dang powerful. Because if you have a unit here, and let's say we get the +1 attack spell off, well, suddenly you're going to roll 12 of these attacks out, and when we do these attacks, what's going to happen is you're going to roll 2 6s, and they're going to explode into 4 mortal wounds, and then you're going to have 9 hits. So they're going to take 9 saves at AP 4, damage 1. So this unit is going to go out and do a massive amount of damage every single time. And they don't care if they die, because they don't cost very much. A 5-man Action Monkey squad with no heavy weapons, to be fair, they're going to be 45 points, and they're going to be getting you retrieve battlefield data, they're going to be move blocking, they're going to be nuts. If you want to give them 2 heavy weapons, then suddenly they're 65 points, which is still value town. And remember, you also have a bunch of knife attacks coming afterwards, which those knife attacks are going to be at strength 4, AP 2, damage 1, which is nonsense. It's so much damage, and they're very cheap. Be scared. They can move block. They also have access to a few stratagems. One of the stratagems will allow them to advance and charge. So let's say they fail the psychic power to give them advance and charge. Now they'll just spend a CP to have advance and charge anyway. But let's say that they're unsure of how far they're going to get to move because they really need a 6 to advance. Well, luckily, Change to the Cults also have a stratagem for an automatic 6 for their advances. So these guys can move 12 inches and still charge, which is very, very nice for them. And remember, there's a stratagem for a 3d6 drop the lowest charge the first time you charge. Or not a stratagem, that's a pre-game upgrade that they have. So you can have a unit of 10 of these guys with 4 of those heavy rock drills I was talking about, and suddenly they're going to be rolling 3d6 from an 8-inch Deepstrike, re-rolling, dropping the lowest dice. It is so good and so terrifying. You have to be aware of what these guys can do. They also have the ability to take what's called a heavy rock saw, which will give them flat 3 damage with their weapons, but you don't get the mortal wound shenanigans. But flat 3 it's pretty Terminator killer. AP 4, flat 3 damage, strength 8. Not too bad, homie. So that's them. Then the bikes. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about these jerks. And I say jerks because these guys are jerks. Squads of 4 to 10. 14-inch movement, and they will do a pre-game move by about 9 inches, okay? Inbuilt, they have fallback, shoot, and charge, which is amazingly powerful. Fallback, shoot, and charge means they can't be tagged, they can't be wrapped up. They're so darn good. And they're always -1 to hit, and they're always counting any unit within 6 inches of them as exposed. So if there's a crossfire marker on the target and they're within 6 inches, they also get exposed, regardless of their positioning, which is very, very powerful because now suddenly those pistols that are pistol 2, strength 4, are going to be wounding on 3s against Marines or wounding on 4s against tougher targets, which makes a really big difference. It also means those wolf quads that we showed earlier on the tabletop simulator, those guys have flamers, which are strength 5, AP 1, or might be AP 2, damage 1. But since they're strength 5 and they're +1 to wound, suddenly they're going to be wounding Marines on 2s. So that is a very, very powerful flamer. Oh, also, those flamers are industrial weapons. So let's spend a CP to make them damage too, because they can do that. Lastly, we have a really special type of grenade, which is 5 points per grenade, but it's called a demo charge. And these demo charges are really good. It's going to be D6 shots, and then it's also going to be strength 8, AP 3, damage 2, going up to damage 3 if they spend CP on that strat for increasing the damage of industrial weapons by 1. Oh my gosh. Lastly, they have a super, super efficient strat that they can use in melee. And in melee, what they're going to do is they're going to throw a grenade. Yes, you heard it. They'll spend a CP and they'll throw a grenade in melee, which is going to be strength 8, AP 3, damage 2. And they're going to be hitting on 2s with that grenade. Yeah, they'll probably suffer some mortal wounds from it, but they don't care. And remember, if the Acolyte icon ward is anywhere near there, they're going to be regenerating D3 models in the command phase. They just don't die. And they don't seem like the tankiest unit, but holy crap, they're tanky. Real fast, we'll just talk about their transports. Their transports are value town because their transports, the Goliath trucks or the Rock Grinders, are always -1 damage, which is super nice for the truck, which is an open top, or the Rock Rider, which is kind of like an assault vehicle. They're also going to have a strat for auto-exploding. They're going to have a strat for counting as if they're on full bracket. And they also will have a catch of demo charges, which means if they have a unit embarked on them, they can throw one of those demolition charges we were just talking about for the bikes every turn, and they don't run out. These are highly efficient transports. They're great at move blocking. They're great at protecting their units. They are great at annoying the piss out of you when a Kellermorph shoots and then jumps in a truck so that you can't retaliate. It's just awesome. You think we're done, guys? Well, we're not, but we're close. We'll be done very soon, I promise. All right, so they have a few other little tricks that you have to know about. We have Excavate, which is a pregame upgrade that they're going to have. And what it's going to do is it's going to change the keywords of a piece of terrain on the battlefield, which they will choose. So let's say you have all your troops hiding in light cover, and you're like, okay, cool, this is going to make me super tough because I'm a Terminator, and it's going to give me a 1-up armor save or something. Well, no. Because what they're going to do is use Excavate, and they're going to make it so that you no longer get light cover, no longer get defensible, no longer get heavy cover or inspiring. And it's going to gain difficult ground, which is going to make you -2 for all your movements through it. So if turn 1, they can cripple you just by making half your army -2 to move, which is awful. So basically what I'm telling you is they will they will win the movement for turn 1. Like, you can't out-deploy them. You just can't do it. A couple other CP strats for you to be aware of. They have a CP strat to turn off Overwatch. You have a lot of nasty flamers you don't want them charging, or that they don't want to charge. Yeah, they'll just turn your Overwatch if you have a Crossfire token on. They have an answer for everything. They have a 1 CP stratagem to auto-advance. We talked about that. But here's one we didn't talk about. They have a 1 CP stratagem to make you fight last if you have a Crossfire token. So when you combine that with their spell for Fight Last, they have 2 different ways to get Fight Last practically anywhere on the tabletop. Ugh. And it's not a relic, and it's not a warlord trait that they can do it with. They just have a strat and a spell. It is so good. They can dominate. They can run circles around people in the combat phase by utilizing these tools. So how do they score? Well, we know that they hit hard. We know that they get board control. How do they score? Well, they're going to score crazy well in primary, first off, because they've got so many obsec bodies. Because everything we spoke about, their acolytes and their neophytes, those guys are troops, which means they're obsec. Broodswarm is their secondary. It's up to 5 points per turn, which is always a good sign. All they have to do is they have to have more models in their deployment zone to score 1 point. They have to have more models in no man's land to score 1 point. They have to have more models on the tabletop to score 1 point. And they have to have more models in your deployment zone to score 1 point. If they get all 4 of those objectives, they get a bonus point. It's always a 15 because they're going to have 180 models on the tabletop. So it's just they start the game with 15 points. On the rare few occasions where maybe, I don't know, they're playing someone else who's somehow more hoardy than they are, maybe they take behind enemy lines and they max that because you can't stop their deep strikes. I don't know. But basically, every time you play them, they start with a 15. Then Ambush is another secondary, which is so good. They get points for killing a unit who had a Crossfire token on. Which is pretty logical. They get extra points for killing a unit who was exposed. Pretty logical. They get extra points for killing a unit with a model that just arrived from Ambush. So the 3 things they want to do naturally is they want to ambush you, they want to shoot you with a Crossfire token while you're exposed, and that's how they want to kill you. And they score points for that. It's pretty easy 15. I would just probably write down, if you go the distance with them, I'd write down 30 in their secondary score at the beginning of the game. Then their third one, they can do a Psychic secondary, they can do normally retrieve battlefield data or something like that. So how are we going to play with them? Well, you know, vaya con Dios. Go with God, because they are one of the top armies in the game right now. They have weaknesses, though. They do have ways that we can take them out. So, what is your priority? Because I personally don't think that we really try to stop their secondaries. You might get lucky every now and then and kill a few in No Man's Land to deny them a few points on Broodswarm, but they'll make it up later in the game. So I don't think trying to deny their secondaries is the best play. I think, personally, your best bet, hopefully you're a mechanized army so they can't just eliminate all your infantry and stuff. But you want to dominate primary. So you want to make sure you get strong board presence. Dark Angels would be ideal about this, but Dark Angels are ideal into everything. So if you can hold them off their primary and you can deny them those primary points, you can still get a huge lead by doing well on your secondaries. And this is something that is very doable because they're not that durable. They're a little annoying to remove because they have that baby chains human, but they have no armor. I mean, a unit of a 10-man of Orc Boys, they're gonna kill at least half of a 20-man blob. You would assume more than half, and then a bunch are gonna run to whatever they call that leadership mechanic. That's a thing that's in the game. So it's going to happen. I wouldn't be too concerned about killing them off of objectives. Once you get the objectives, you have to hold it, though, because they will score their secondaries. And they will block your movement. But remember, guys, if they can block your movement, that means you can block their movement. And then once they're engaged in melee, you will crumble them because they don't have great leadership. You'll mow straight through them. But they can trade a few of those units because, like I said, those acolytes at minimum size are only going to be 45 points. So you have to be a little aware of if they're just feeding you a piece they want to feed you, or if it's a unit they actually need. But get to melee, crumple, dominate that primary. Screening. There's 2 schools on screening for these guys, which is, I think, the biggest question about how to play Chainsaw Cults. One school is YOLO. You know, you can't stop them anyway, so full speed ahead. Let's just do this. Wah, baby. And every army in the game was, not just orcs. Every army was. If you might call it something else like a battle cry, whatever. No, every army was. I personally don't think this is the best way to play GSC Cults. I think we should be gunning but brutal. So if we're running, especially if we're running armies that have tons of bodies, like orcs, for example, I think it's amazing because these types of armies, you actually can screen GSC Cults. You can do it. Now, no, you can't screen the 3-inch lying in wait ability, but the rest of the army, you can. You can still dictate where they want to go on the battlefield. Then the last piece of advice I really want to give people whenever you're playing GSC Cults is you need to have some nastiness in strategic reserves, ready to deal with their getting into your backfield. They want to get into your deployment zone because that's how they're going to score more points on Brood. That's how they're going to take your backfield objective. They have to dominate everything. When that happens, you have to be able to handle that. You need something in strategic reserves because remember the new rules of strategic reserves in Arc of Omen is that if you come in on your own table edge, you can come in engaged in combat. There's no 9-inch rule there. As long as you're within 1 inch of your table edge, you can come in engaged in combat. Most of the time, this means that you'll come in like maybe 3 or 4 inches away. But still, it's pretty amazing. So you need something really, really reliable in strategic reserves that can handle these backfield deep strikes. Now, what are we going to take against them? It really depends on your army composition. But bottom line, it'll always be no prisoners because they're going to give you no prisoners. They're even worse than Necrons are about it. So they're going to have more models, and they're always going to be easy to kill. And even if they don't have quite enough models to make it 15, they're going to be resurrecting guys, so you'll get 15. It's just done. Then any guaranteed secondaries that you want. So, I mean, Necrons are pretty simple. They're going to be doing Treasure of the Aeons or Ancient Machineries. Orcs, pretty simple. We're going to be doing Get the Good Bits. World Eaters are just going to be doing whatever their nonsense is. Dark Angels, you're going to be doing Codex Warfare. So these are going to be things that you know that you're going to score really well on. Those add them to no prisoners. The third one can always be a little bit tricky. If you have a second secondary that's unique to your Codex that can do it, go for it. Psychic secondaries can work really well, but not if they have that Psyker. If they have that Psyker with the Unwilling Orb, don't do it, guys. It's going to be such a headache. Just don't do it. You'll score 4 points or something. Like it's just not reliable at that point. Do not take a Psychic secondary against these guys if they're running a Psyker. If they're not, okay, go ahead and do a Psychic secondary. Assassination is a little bit of a trap. Here's a little thing that we failed to mention. So their characters have a ability to pass off wounds onto other models. So let's say you have a unit of 10 neophytes and a Primus. Or you know what, let me just go to TT Tabletop Simulator and I'll show you this. So let's say I have this Magus right here. And then I've got some Knobs. And then I've got some Neophytes. And the Knobs charge in. And we say, hey. Or even better, let's use the Kellamorph. I like the Kellamorph more than Magus because the Kellamorph is the coolest character in the game. Kellamorph's here. These Knobs say, hey, I'm going to kill this Kellamorph. And one of them is going to kill some Neophytes. Well, so these two nubs are going to throw out 6 power claw attacks at the Kilomorph. Let's say they hit with them all, and they wound with them all. Well, the Kilomorph has a 5 invuln. So what he's going to do is he's going to roll his 6 saves, and he saves exactly 2 of them. Boom, boom. So he saves 2 of those. Very, very cool. Now he suffered, so you think he suffered 8 wounds? No, he has not. Because what he's going to do is he's just going to pass them off onto his troops. And he's just going to go boom. Let's pretend that was a win. Let's just say he rolls 3 4s on his pass-offs because he can only pass off wounds on a 4-up. Suddenly, boom, 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 and boom, he's unharmed, and you just killed 4 neophytes. They can always pass wounds off onto neophytes on a 4-up. It's very, very strong, which means you have to kill their troops before you try to kill the characters. Because the characters are going to be the ones with invulns and with saves. The troops don't have saves. So if you just kill the troops first, then he's got no one to pass them off. And it's a 3-inch range. So in this situation, he can still pass it off, even though it looks like it's kind of far. So it's a 3-inch range. Forgive me what I'm doing with my eyes right now. My contacts are starting to get a little bit dry. But we're almost done. I'll let you get out of here really fast. Or really quickly. Or soon. Whatever that word. So that's the way the characters are. So I think Assassination is a little bit of a trap. Behind enemy line is great. But you're always going to have some danger of being screened out. So the tertiary can be a little bit tricky. So that's the list, guys. So that's what's happening with our GSC cults. Before I let you go, let's just do one more thing. I wanted to kind of show you about what I was talking about with screening out. So let's take these acolytes back. All right. So these guys have the upgrade lying in wait. So we've got our Gretchen here. And we have this objective. We're super happy. We're super proud of ourselves. Oh no, we deep strike. We take your objective. Guys, they have this unit. I promise you. GSC Cults has this unit that can do this. So which means you're never going to hold an objective like this. It's pretty simple. What you're going to do is you're going to hold this objective like this. You're going to have your Gretchen just spread out a little bit. Still legally placed, just spread out a little bit. Which means this little guy has a 3-inch aura. He can't take your objective. Even if he comes within 3 inches, there's nowhere here where he can get within 3 inches of within the objective without being within 3 inches of you. So you just have to hold your objectives a little more intelligently. You can't have all your guys on one side, especially if you know he hasn't brought this unit in again. But then, even though you can't completely screen this unit out, remember, depending on how you place your models, a unit of 10 man of Gretchen can actually block a huge range. So let's say this is a different unit that has the 6-inch upgrade. They can still get in, sure, but this unit of 10 Gretchen has effectively screened out over half of the entire deployment zone. So if you had 2 units of this, you can block the entire table quarter. Guys, you can screen GSC cults. It's just hard. It's going to require some very meticulous movement. But if you just look how I build these bubbles here, which is why I like TTS, so if you guys aren't using TTS, you should. Because it can really show you the size of these auras. All of this is completely screened out. So he cannot be within any of these purple lines here. You just can't do it. This is how you're going to dictate the control battle against GSC. Don't give them those crazy angles where they can just pop up anywhere. If you do, you're going to lose. But if you, say, had this weird boy here as well, suddenly these guys can't go here, which means they're going to have to go, like, all the way over here. But wait. These grots have a 6-inch bubble. So now they can't go there either. So they're going to have to go here. You can still control their movement, guys. You just have to screen a lot more in-depth. Anyway, this was my in-depth tactical guide to the GSC cults. Guys, everything in here this was pretty in-depth. This is pretty complete. You might have to watch this 1 or 2 times. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Please give me a like. In the comment box, chat any questions that you have. I will actually address these questions. And if you want to know which army, I need to know which army you want me to do next. So please leave me a few comments and I'll read those up. And I'll do that on the next army, whether it's World Eaters or Necrons or whoever. So I love this stuff. This is Advanced Tactics with Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. Thank you so much for attending, and we are going to be out of here.